Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one when it comes to understanding that the body and the mind, they work together. Because if your body is not doing what your mind would like it to do, or vice versa, you're going to have some problems. But then we do have to look at more so of what is past the physical, what is past the mental. Because we can look at what the physical damage refers to, right? Measurable, often immediate harm to the body. But then for the mental, right, on the other hand, it's more subtle in the sense of we might not be able to see what's happening, right? Fear, anxiety, stress, all of these things can be mental damage to us. And we are living every single day with mental damage. And you might have not gotten physically hurt in a while. Maybe you stubbed your toe yesterday or the day before. Maybe you got a paper cut and you're like, oh my God, I got a paper cut. It's the end of the world, right? Whatever, right? We can look at, we have more mental damage in our world today than we do physical. Now, this is not only talking about just general life, but sometimes from traumatic experiences. Maybe you're in a toxic relationship. So maybe not only is there physical harm to you, physical damage, but the mental harm that is being caused to you every single day, living in fear, living in anxiety, all of these negative types of words that are coming towards you and actions that are coming towards you. Maybe at some point you're going to feel like, am I even worth it? Right? So now all this negativity is starting to seep into our mind. Mental damage can have a huge impact on our life. So I wrote this article here. It's called Physical versus Mental Damage. Sometimes we can experience both of them at the same time, but oftentimes it's going to come with one or the other. Typically, mental damage is going to linger a lot more than physical damage, even if you might say, well, I got a cut, my body's healing, and there's a scab. Eventually, your body's going to maybe have a scar, and within a couple months, maybe years, that scar is going to fade away. And maybe there might be something there to help you be remembered or remind yourself that, hey, this was an injury, a past injury of mine. When it comes to the mental, it's not so much that we want to naturally look at all the time. Because what happens with the mental is that it's not visible to us often. So a trauma that we had in childhood, guess what we do? We throw it in the closet. We sweep it under the rug. That's why they say, like you don't want people knowing about your skeletons in the closet. And oftentimes those are the mental traumas and hurdles that we have experienced and that we are ashamed of. But then again, how do we heal from those mental challenges, right? Our body naturally heals from a physical injury. Maybe it's, if it's severe, like a gunshot wound, you're not going to use a Band-Aid, you're going to use a surgeon, right? We have to understand that there's going to be different levels of physical damage, and there's going to be different levels of mental damage. In our world today, mental damage is going to be almost prevalent in everyone's life because that's just the way our world is moving. We're going to have people who don't like us. We're going to have people who might want to harm us for whatever reason, right? And it's not that you're a bad person. It's just that their circumstance might be different than your circumstance. And sure enough, maybe something happens and now there is going to be a scare factor, some type of discrepancy that causes issues later on for each other. Well, we can look at the statistics for crime, and we could see in certain areas and cities, especially in cities that defund the police, where there can be more physical damage that happens to the populace, right? Maybe someone gets jumped, someone is, harmed severely. Getting away from that negative aspect, let's get into the aspect that many people don't necessarily think about. Living in that neighborhood, what do you think it does to the mind? Maybe you're paranoid. Oh, I don't want to go out because if I go out too late, someone's going to rob me. Or I don't want to go out because the last time I went out, there was a drunk driver or something like that, or there was a shootout on the corner, right? And I'm not saying that you live in these neighborhoods, and I hope you don't. But there is an aspect to what happens. Because even if it didn't happen yet, the mind is going to anticipate it happening. Because the number one thing the mind does, or its mission, is to keep yourself alive. So the mind will give you all of these different types of things that could happen because it understands, hey, if I don't have my body, the mind is going to die. So we try to keep our body safe. But yet how we keep it safe is typically, well, let's not use any energy. So that's why people don't go to the gym. That's why people don't work on, well-being in themselves, because it requires energy. Change requires energy. And so we would rather just kind of stay at a lower level of frequency and then allow our mental to kind of be this bland thing that we just lackadaisically allow to kind of go through every single day. And we wonder why we are having a mental health crisis in the world today. Mental health is something that we should be looking at more readily, but we don't necessarily see that the damage it is doing every single day. Now, if someone was pinching you and you had all these marks on your hand, maybe you were, had to get a Band-Aid or something, you can see that, right? You can see that wound. But what does it do to your mind? Now you're more self-conscious. You're afraid when that person is there, right? You're more timid. Whatever it be, the mental damage is greater than the Band-Aids that you have to put onto your wounds. Because that physical damage that is there, it's going to heal within a couple of days. But how long will that mental damage last? I know people from elementary school that are still dealing with the damage of what elementary school was, let alone high school, let alone college maybe. Now we have all of these broken individuals literally just trying to get by and not deal with their traumas that have already happened. Therapists love to look at, well, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your parents, your relationship with your parents. And they're trying to get a good understanding of what type of mental damage you need to recover from. Because they can look at you and they can see, okay, well, physically, you don't have any wounds maybe, but maybe you have bags under your eyes. Maybe you look a little bit thin. Maybe you look a little bit chunky too, right? So they look at all of these different things like your physical, like your demeanor, and if it's good or if it's not good. Well, we have to look at certain situations. And one of the things I want to look at is the 2009 economic collapse. And we just going to go back about, 2010 area and then work our way up from there. So people can see within the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, how much mental damage has happened, right? Because this is important because making a point here now. 2009, we had the economic collapse and we had many people who were, investing in homes and they had their homes and their home value just kind of tanked. And now, home prices went up. It took, what, 8 years or something like that. Now, of course, it was, I believe, 2013 was when the home started to go back up. But then again, to reclaim the value of what your home was, very different. So we can look at the span of, there was a 5-year span, about 5 years of, we don't know if our home is going to ever be worth what we paid for. So most homeowners were underwater. And what most people did was, we don't know how much these homes are going to tank, how much the economy is going to implode. So we're not going to put faith in the economy. And this is just the majority of the populace. Now, of course, there's going to be people who still hedge on that, but we're not necessarily talking about the top 15% of people. We're looking at just the common people, right? Just regular Joes that are going to work 9 to 5s, trying to figure out what they're going to do. So many individuals during the economic collapse, they lost faith in the system. So they stopped investing. So they started to live paycheck to paycheck. They stopped putting their money in the banks because they didn't trust banks. So all of these things, and now your money is not keeping up with inflation. And we can look at what happened with inflation. And many people are struggling today, all because of what happened with the economy momentarily. We don't look at, well, this is a moment, but it's not a lifetime. But that damage is going to say, I don't want to lose my money if I put it in the stock market. I don't want to buy a home because what happened if the prices drop or something? Of course, all of this is plausible, possible, but at the same time, we can't just always live in the negative. We can't just live in the bad moments of our life and say that the reason why I'm not going to take action is because of that moment. We can look at some of the wars that have happened over the years. We can look at recent wars with like Ukraine and Russia and what happens there, or we can just look at what happened with, what was happening in Iraq. What I think about when it comes to a war is the damage that war does mentally to someone. People who came back from Vietnam, I know we're going far back now, they're coming back with like sunken eyes at things they saw. They were literally fighting for their lives. For those individuals, their mental damage might have been way more than their physical damage, even if they lost some limbs. And you might think, well, you have some bad physical damage. And rightfully so, they do, right? They lost maybe both legs, maybe an arm, maybe they lost all their extremities. Guess what? This mental damage that they have to live with now, probably greater than any pain they've ever felt. And what happens with soldiers, especially veterans, is that they end up taking their own lives because they feel as if there's no outlet. It's not that they're in physical pain anymore. It's that they're in mental pain. The mental damage has superseded the physical pain that they have ever and probably will ever feel. So if we understand that the difference between physical pain and mental pain can be life and death, what can we do about it? Now, I talk about in this article a little bit what you can do to help you get over some of the mental damages, because that is going to be a significant factor. Physical damage is typically a bit more simple to deal with. We clean our wounds, we go to the doctor, we go to the hospital, and typically with medical care and science and technology, we can make a difference in our physical damage or physical health. But mental, we need to see a therapist, we need to see a psychologist, we need to see a neurologist, we need to see a life coach, a mindset coach, whatever, to get out of this mental pit that we are living in. And so many people today are living in that mental dilemma. So you have to ask yourself $1 million question. What type of mental damage am I dealing with today? Because if you are understanding that the damage that you are dealing with is not healthy, you have the ability to change it. I always say that you're not a tree. You're not something that's an inanimate object. You are someone that can start and continue change. Because if we keep going down this path of allowing mental damage to just supersede everything we do in our day in our life, we're going to have a populace that can't even function properly. Yeah, physical damage might be a one-off thing, right? You get hurt, there's a motorcycle accident, car accident, you have to go through that physical therapy aspect, and it could be painful, right? It might be extremely painful, maybe the worst pain you have ever felt in your life. And I'm trying to think the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. I think of when I got eye surgery, and it was, no, let me tell you, the physical pain was tremendous, but the mental pain was debilitating. Let me explain. When I got the eye surgery, we did PRK. So they use like a brush or something, and this like is literally like a motorized toothbrush, and they literally gloss your eyes so the laser can shoot through. So they smooth your eyes, and my eyes look blue. Like I have brown eyes. I have very nice brown eyes, but my eyes look blue. And I was like, my eyes are blue, and it's literally because it glossed over. Well, either way, after the surgery, they give you bandage contacts so the eye can heal. what happened with one of the bandage contacts was, I guess it was too tight or something. So either way, the doctor wanted to remove the contact and replace it with something different, a bigger one. Well, we had a problem because apparently because the eye has to heal, so it scabs over essentially, and you have to put all of these drops so your eye doesn't scab over and close. I know it's disgusting, but this is reality. When he took off that contact, he basically pulled off a piece of my skin in my eye, and my God, it hurt so much, probably equivalent to being stabbed by a knife. Well, either way, my eye started tearing down. It wasn't that I was crying or anything. It's just my eye was involuntary, just was like a faucet. Like you turn on your sink, you turn on your shower. It was literally that much water coming out. I was like, whoa, I can't imagine that. And my and couldn't open. And I'm able to still be there, talk to the doctor. And the doctor was like, hey, I need you to open your eye so he can put the contact. And my eye was literally like a fist. It would not open at all. Not at all. The physical damage hurt it, right? But my mind was like, I'm not going to allow this person to do any more physical harm to me. And I was trying to open my eye, literally, I understood, I trusted that doctor, with my life. I was literally trying to open my eye. And I told the doctor, I was like, I can't open my eye. So he had to pry my eye open, and then he was able to get the contact in. And he was like, I'm sorry. I was like, that was insane. So after that, when I went back to, some checkups and things like that, there was a blur in my eye where the scab was. So I can literally see it was a wiggle thing, literally where the skin was ripped off from the bandage or the contact. And I was like, I got to go there and I got to do it again. Right. So I'm not anticipating any more physical pain because I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. This sucks. So even when I went back, one of the things I asked him, I was like, hey, can I get some numbing eye drops so you can work with my eye and I won't feel any pain? And it wasn't that I was afraid of the pain. It was the mental damage that happened the previous time that said, hey, let me be more careful. That careful, that caution is sometimes something we all live with in life. And I'm sure you probably heard of the quote, toss caution to the wind. For me, it was being cautious. And sometimes in life, we do it almost instinctually. We do it almost automatically, where we just kind of fall into our circumstance. And that is the mental damage that many people are living within. They just kind of fall into whatever felt safe, what feels comfortable, because they might have learned pain before. They don't want to start a relationship again because there could be something that is causing them that mental pain. So they're like, I don't want to get into a relationship. I'm going to pick the safe job. I'm going to pick the safe relationships. I'm going to pick the safe foods, things like that, because you are going down this path of, I'm not going to give myself more physical pain because now the mental pain is I have the trauma from what happened previously. So there is a big understanding of mental pain is something that we have to look at. So in this article, once more, damage versus physical damage, physical damage is that physical aspect of it, but that mental damage is something that can truly affect your mindset. It's something that can debilitate you. For example, people back in war times, they might have lost a vantage point in the morale from the troops. Is like, listen, we lost already. But then sometimes the morale can be like, let's keep on fighting to the death. Oftentimes when they see, or, there's a saying, if you look death in the eye, that right there is going to be maybe the most significant harm that you can do to your psyche. And that's why many people who experience a death of a loved one, they have to go get grief coaching, or they have to go through counseling, or they have to go to therapy because it is a trauma within them. They didn't die. There was no physical harm done to them, but the mental damage was so severe. And so we can see just from looking at our own personal lives, or just maybe from reading this article, that physical and mental damage are going to be something that we need to look at with almost a fine tooth and comb. Not so much of the physical damage, because it's something that we can see more readily. but the mental damage is something that we need to check in more readily. So I encourage everyone to seek out a health professional. You could get a life coach, a mindset coach. You can seek out a therapist if you need one, whatever it be. But you start to work on your mental, because research and studies have shown if you can work on your mental bit by bit and heal from some of the traumas that you have had in your life, rather than just throw them in the closet, sweep them under the rug, you're going to be a more viable candidate for success and happiness later on in life. It's almost like we give our mindset this bit of optimism, a bit of positivity, and an understanding for growth. But we have to deal with the mental damage that we have been dealt. Many people are afraid to deal with it, because it's almost like you have to rip off that Band-Aid and then deal with what goes on in the mind. We can't be afraid to heal. We can't be afraid to tell our story. And we can't be afraid to be great once more. So if you're ready to step into greatness, I encourage you to check out this article once more, Physical versus Mental Damage. Understand a little bit about the differences, and then take the initiative. You can reach out to us to get a consultation. We can learn more about your situation and then develop a plan and strategy to help you get out of that damage that you might be currently living in and into something that's going to be a healthier situation for both the body and the mind.